Whispering Woods, A Tale of Terror. Chapter 1, The Call of the Unknown. Nestled deep within the Pacific Northwest, where the Cascade Mountains rise majestically and the fog weaves its ethereal tapestry, lies a forest known as the Whispering Woods. Its ancient trees, gnarled and twisted by time, stand as silent sentinels, guarding secrets that have been whispered for centuries. Legend has it that the Whispering Woods is a place of liminality, a threshold between our world and the unseen. Some say it is a portal to the realm of the Fae, where creatures of myth and magic dwell. Others believe it to be a gateway to the Shadowlands, a realm of darkness and malevolent spirits. For generations, the Whispering Woods has been a place of both fascination and fear. Local villagers speak of it in hushed tones, recounting tales of lost souls and strange apparitions. Yet some are drawn to its dark embrace, lured by the promise of adventure or the thrill of the unknown. Chapter 2, Into the Mist. On a crisp autumn morning, a group of 4 hikers set out to explore the Whispering Woods. There was Daniel, the fearless leader, always seeking new challenges. Emily, the inquisitive botanist, eager to discover the forest's hidden flora. Michael, the skeptical photographer, determined to capture the beauty and mystery of the place. And Sarah, the cautious historian, drawn to the forest's ancient legends. As they entered the forest, the air grew heavy with moisture, and the sunlight began to filter through the dense canopy, casting dappled shadows on the forest floor. The only sounds were the crunch of leaves underfoot and the occasional chirping of birds. But as they walked deeper into the woods, a sense of unease began to settle over them. The trees seemed to close in around them, their branches reaching out like grasping hands. The air became still and silent, save for the faint whispering sound that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Chapter 3, The Haunting Begins. The hikers soon found themselves enveloped in a thick fog that obscured their surroundings. The trail they had been following disappeared, leaving them disoriented and lost. Suddenly, they heard it, a low, guttural growl that seemed to emanate from the depths of the forest. Their hearts pounding, they turned to face the source of the sound. Emerging from the fog was a creature unlike anything they had ever seen before. It was tall and gaunt, with long, sharp claws and glowing red eyes. Its skin was a sickly pale, and its teeth were bared in a snarl. The creature let out a blood-curdling scream and lunged at the hikers. They scattered in fear, each one running for their lives. Chapter 4, Desperate Flight. Daniel, the leader, was the first to be caught. The creature pounced on him, its claws tearing through his flesh. His screams echoed through the forest as the creature dragged him away, leaving a trail of blood in its wake. Emily, the botanist, stumbled through the undergrowth, her mind racing. She could hear the creature's roars getting closer, and she knew she had to find a way to escape. Suddenly, she spotted a large tree up ahead. She ran towards it, her lungs burning, and scrambled up the trunk. The creature was right behind her, its hot breath on her neck. She reached the top of the tree just as the creature reached the bottom. It roared in frustration and swiped at the tree with its claws, leaving deep gouges in the bark. Emily clung to the branch for dear life, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew that if she fell, the creature would be on her in an instant. Chapter 5, A Glimmer of Hope. Michael, the photographer, had managed to escape the creature's initial attack. He ran as fast as he could, his camera bouncing around his neck. He could hear the creature's roars behind him, and he knew he was running out of time. He had to find a place to hide, somewhere the creature wouldn't find him. He spotted a small cave up ahead and ducked inside. He held his breath, hoping the creature wouldn't find him. He heard the creature's roars getting closer, and then it stopped. He could hear it sniffing around the entrance to the cave. Michael closed his eyes and prayed that the creature would go away. After a few agonizing minutes, he heard the creature's roars recede into the distance. Whispering Woods, A Tale of Terror, continued. Chapter 6. The Final Stand. Sarah, the historian, stood frozen in fear as the creature stepped towards her. Its eyes were glowing red, and its teeth were bared in a snarl. She knew she had to do something, but she was too afraid to move. The creature raised its claws, ready to strike. Sarah closed her eyes and braced for impact. Suddenly she heard a voice. "Sarah!" She opened her eyes and saw Michael running towards her. He was holding a large branch, which he had found in the cave. "Get behind me!" he shouted. Sarah did as she was told, and Michael swung the branch at the creature. The creature roared in pain and backed away. Michael swung the branch again, and this time the creature fell to the ground. Sarah took the opportunity to run away. She ran as fast as she could, not looking back. She could hear the creature's roars behind her, but she didn't stop running. Finally, she reached the edge of the forest. She burst out of the trees and collapsed on the ground, gasping for breath. She looked back at the forest, but she couldn't see the creature. She didn't know if it was dead or alive, but she didn't care. She had escaped. Chapter 7. The Aftermath. Sarah and Michael met up with the other survivors, Emily and Daniel. They were all shaken by what had happened, but they were grateful to be alive. They made their way back to the village, where they told the villagers what had happened. The villagers were horrified by the story, but they were also relieved that the hikers had survived. The hikers stayed in the village for a few days, recovering from their ordeal. Then they set off for home, determined to put the experience behind them. Chapter 8. The Unseen. But the experience was not so easily forgotten. The hikers were haunted by the memories of what they had seen and heard in the Whispering Woods. They often had nightmares about the creature, and they would wake up in a cold sweat. They were afraid to go back to the forest, and they avoided talking about what had happened. But even though they tried to forget, the Whispering Woods never forgot them. Chapter 9. The Return. A few years later, Sarah received a letter from the village. The villagers were asking her to come back to the Whispering Woods. They said that strange things had been happening in the forest since the hikers had left. There had been reports of sightings of the creature, and the villagers were afraid. Sarah knew that she had to go back. She had to face the creature and put an end to it once and for all. Chapter 10. The Reckoning. Sarah returned to the Whispering Woods, accompanied by Michael, Emily, and Daniel. They were all armed with weapons, and they were determined to find the creature and destroy it. They searched the forest for days, but they couldn't find the creature. It was as if it had vanished into thin air. Then, one night, they heard it. The creature's roars echoed through the forest, and they knew that it was close. The hikers followed the sound of the roars until they came to a clearing. In the center of the clearing was a large tree, and the creature was perched on a branch. The creature looked down at the hikers, its eyes glowing red with rage. It opened its mouth and let out a blood-curdling scream. The hikers raised their weapons and fired. The bullets hit the creature, but it didn't seem to faze it. The creature roared again and charged at the hikers. The hikers scattered, firing their weapons as they ran. The creature was faster than them, and it was gaining on them. Just when it seemed like all hope was lost, Sarah had an idea. She reached into her backpack and pulled out a book. It was a book of ancient spells, and she knew that there was one spell that could stop the creature. She opened the book and began to read the spell. As she read, the creature slowed down. Its eyes began to glaze over, and its roars became weaker. Finally, the creature stopped moving altogether. It stood there for a moment, and then it collapsed to the ground, dead. The hikers stood over the creature's body, relieved and exhausted. They had finally defeated the creature, and they had avenged the deaths of their friends. Epilogue. The hikers returned to the village, where they were greeted as heroes. The villagers were grateful for their help, and they celebrated their victory. The hikers stayed in the village for a few more days, and then they set off for home.